The sound of tearing fabric cut through the elegant ballroom like a gunshot. Hundreds of conversations stopped at once as a young waitress stood frozen beneath the crystal chandeliers, one hand clutching the torn front of her uniform and the other trembling at her side. Across from her stood a glamorous woman with an expression of pure contempt, still gripping the piece of fabric she had ripped away. What nobody in that room knew was that the woman they had just humiliated was not simply a waitress. And within minutes, the most powerful man in the room was going to walk through those doors and reveal exactly who she was. Welcome back to Compassion Chronicles, where every story reminds us that kindness can change a life and that appearances rarely tell the whole truth. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for people who are treated unfairly, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope, and subscribe to Compassion Chronicles. And before we begin, tell us in the comments, which country are you watching from? Now, let's begin. Her name was Seraphina Vale, though almost nobody at the prestigious Belmont Grand knew it. To the wealthy guests who came there, she was simply another member of the service staff, dressed in a white blouse, dark apron, and comfortable shoes, moving quietly between tables while carrying trays of champagne. Seraphina had chosen the job herself. She could have lived differently, but she had spent the previous year keeping her identity private for a reason. She wanted to know who people were when they thought she had nothing to offer them. She wanted to understand the world without her family name opening every door. Most importantly, she wanted to prove something to herself, that she could build something meaningful without depending on the fortune she had inherited. That evening, the Belmont Grand was hosting a charity gala attended by business leaders, celebrities, and some of the city's wealthiest families. Seraphina had been working since early afternoon, helping prepare tables and serving guests with patience even when they barely looked at her. Then Vivian Cross, the glamorous girlfriend of notorious CEO Kellen Rourke, entered the ballroom. Vivian was known for her expensive taste, sharp tongue, and belief that everyone around her existed to serve her. When Seraphina accidentally brushed past her while carrying a tray, Vivian immediately turned around, furious. She demanded an apology, but Seraphina calmly apologized and explained that another guest had stepped into her path. Instead of accepting it, Vivian laughed cruelly. She looked Seraphina up and down and called her an embarrassment who should learn her place. Several guests heard the insult, but nobody wanted to get involved. Kellen Rourke stood nearby, distracted by a conversation with investors. Seraphina swallowed her pride and tried to walk away. She had learned long ago that dignity sometimes meant refusing to fight people who only wanted to provoke you. But Vivian wasn't finished. She followed her across the room and grabbed the sleeve of Seraphina's uniform. Seraphina gently asked her to let go. Vivian's face hardened. In a burst of anger, she pulled violently at the blouse. The fabric tore open with a sharp sound, exposing the simple undershirt beneath it. The ballroom went silent. Seraphina instinctively covered herself, her eyes filling with humiliation as whispers spread around the room. For a moment, she felt 16 again, standing outside a school office after classmates had mocked her because they thought her family was poor. She remembered her mother's advice from those difficult days: never let another person's cruelty decide what you believe about yourself. So Seraphina lifted her chin. She didn't scream. She didn't insult Vivian. She simply looked at her and said that no amount of money gave anyone permission to humiliate another human being. That quiet response somehow made Vivian angrier. She accused Seraphina of pretending to be important and threatened to have her fired. Then she announced loudly that she knew the hotel's owners and could make sure Seraphina never worked anywhere respectable again. A few guests looked away. Others began recording the scene on their phones. But then something unexpected happened. The ballroom doors opened. A man in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit entered with 2 security officers behind him. The room changed instantly. Conversations died. Managers hurried forward. Even the hotel's general director looked nervous. The man's name was Evander Sterling, a billionaire investor whose companies owned properties across 3 continents. He rarely attended public events, and almost nobody expected him that night. But Evander wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking directly at Seraphina. His expression changed the moment he saw her torn blouse and tearful eyes. He crossed the ballroom without hesitation and removed his suit jacket, gently placing it around her shoulders. Then he turned toward the room, his voice calm but unmistakably firm. He said that the woman everyone had treated as a waitress was not a stranger to him. She was his wife. The room seemed to stop breathing. Vivian's confidence disappeared. Kellen Rourke stared at Seraphina in disbelief. He had spent months trying to secure a business partnership with Evander Sterling, never realizing the woman he had ignored at countless events was the billionaire's wife. But Evander didn't use his wealth to humiliate anyone in return. Instead, he asked Seraphina if she was all right. That question broke the final wall she had been holding together. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she admitted that she was tired, not because of the job, but because people constantly assumed that anyone wearing a uniform deserved less respect. Evander took her hand and told the room that his wife had deliberately worked anonymously because she wanted to experience ordinary life without privilege protecting her. He said she had served elderly guests who never thanked her, helped coworkers after exhausting shifts, and once spent her own evening helping a kitchen employee get home safely during a storm. She had never needed to prove she was wealthy. Her character had already done that. Then came the consequence nobody expected. Evander announced that the charity gala's remaining funds would be redirected toward a program supporting hospitality workers facing workplace harassment and financial hardship. Seraphina had quietly designed the proposal months earlier, never imagining that one terrible evening would become the moment it finally launched. Kellen walked away from Vivian, realizing too late that her cruelty had cost him more than a relationship. It had exposed the kind of person he had chosen to stand beside. Vivian was escorted away from the event, while the people who had remained silent slowly approached Seraphina, apologizing for watching instead of helping. Seraphina accepted their apologies, but she also reminded them that kindness means more when it happens before the powerful person enters the room. And that night, she learned something she would never forget: sometimes the strongest response to humiliation isn't revenge. Sometimes it is standing tall, knowing who you are, and refusing to become cruel just because someone was cruel to you. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe to Compassion Chronicles. Your support helps us continue telling stories that remind people that dignity belongs to everyone. And before we reach the final moment, I want to ask you something special. Comment "Dignity Always" below if you believe nobody should be judged by their clothes, job, or social status. As Seraphina left the ballroom that night with Evander's jacket around her shoulders, she looked back at the room where she had been humiliated only minutes before. She realized that the torn blouse wasn't a symbol of shame anymore. It was proof that someone could try to tear away your dignity without ever succeeding. Because your worth is not determined by what you wear, where you work, or how much money you have. Your worth is determined by the heart you carry when nobody is watching.